The story follows Noah, a tough-minded teenage girl who is suddenly forced to leave her familiar world behind and start over in a new city. Haunted by memories of a painful childhood, she struggles to adapt to her new surroundings, especially when she finds herself drawn to her mysterious and rebellious stepbrother, Nick. What begins as hostility slowly turns into a dangerous and forbidden attraction that tests both of them. The film opens with Noah packing her belongings, preparing to move out of her old home. Among her things is a photograph of herself as a child with her father, taken at a car racing event. She hesitates before leaving the photo behind, then turns back and takes it with her, revealing how deeply connected she still is to her past. During the drive, Noah speaks with her mother, and it becomes clear that they are moving into the home of Noah's new stepfather, a wealthy man who rescued her mother from hardship after a failed marriage to Noah's abusive, alcoholic father. Noah is clearly unhappy about the move. She doesn't want to leave behind her friends or the boy she's been seeing. When they arrive at the massive seaside mansion, her stepfather Emmanuel warmly welcomes them, but Noah barely acknowledges him. As she steps inside, she realizes just how dramatically her mother's life has changed. Her mother shows Noah to a luxurious bedroom with a stunning ocean view and reassures her that she has every right to live there, just like Emmanuel's son, Nicholas. Once alone, Noah studies the photo of her father again, visibly shaken by the memories it brings back. Stepping onto the balcony, she unexpectedly spots Nicholas outside. Shortly after, a friend calls Noah, joking that she's now lucky enough to inherit wealth thanks to her mother's rich marriage. Noah dismisses the idea, saying she has no interest in living the shallow, privileged life of someone like Nicholas. Almost immediately, Nicholas appears, introducing himself in a provocative way by commanding his aggressive dog to frighten her, then calling it off. Furious, Noah storms back into her room. That evening, the family heads out for dinner together. In the car, Noah scrolls through old photos of herself and her boyfriend and texts him, asking him to call. As she sends the message, Nicholas drives past her, locking eyes with her in a way that feels unsettling yet magnetic. At dinner, Emmanuel proudly praises Nicholas, describing him as a talented surfer and a successful law student with a promising future. Noah cuts him off sharply, accusing Nicholas of being a spoiled failure who will always rely on his father's money. Tension explodes, and Noah leaves the table. Emmanuel asks Nicholas to drive her home. On the way, Nicholas speeds recklessly, frightening Noah. She lashes out, calling him arrogant and careless. He fires back, claiming she gets away with her behavior because her mother adores her. Noah responds coldly, saying he knows nothing about a mother's love. Struck by the comment, Nicholas abruptly stops the car and orders her out before driving off. Left alone and panicked, Noah realizes her phone battery is dead. Just in time, one of Nicholas's friends pulls up and offers her a ride to a party filled with wealthy, reckless young people. At the party, Noah immediately notices Nicholas surrounded by girls, which stirs unexpected jealousy and anger in her. Nicholas spots her and demands to know how she got there. She threatens to expose his behavior to his father, but he warns her to stay out of his life and walks away. A girl named Gina befriends Noah and pulls her into the party scene. When Gina asks who Noah is, Nicholas cruelly introduces her as his illegitimate sister, humiliating her. Hurt and overwhelmed, Noah starts drinking heavily. Nicholas notices she's gone too far and, despite everything, decides to take her home. When they arrive back at the mansion, Noah is barely conscious. Nicholas carries her inside and gently places her on his bed before leaving the room, marking the beginning of a complicated, emotionally charged connection neither of them is ready to confront. That night, Noah is haunted by a disturbing dream from her childhood. She relives moments of terror, remembering how her mother once hid her inside a closet, desperately trying to protect her, while Noah's father violently attacked her. The memory leaves Noah shaken when she wakes. The following morning, Noah spends time at the beach with Gina. As they talk, Noah notices Nicholas nearby, preparing to surf. It quickly becomes obvious that he draws attention wherever he goes, girls gather around him, clearly attracted by his looks and wealth. Nicholas heads into the water, riding the waves effortlessly, while Noah watches him from a distance, her expression conflicted and unreadable. Later that night, Nicholas participates in an underground car race organized for the wealthy elite. Ronnie, one of the racers, openly challenges him. The first matchup pits Nicholas against a driver from Ronnie's crew. Just as the race is about to begin, Nicholas spots Noah arriving at the scene. Distracted by her presence, he hesitates at the start. Although he pushes himself to catch up using his racing skills, his focus keeps drifting, especially when he notices another young man standing close to Noah. From afar, Noah watches the race alongside Gina and Leon. As the cars approach the final turn, Nicholas's opponent suddenly breaks down, allowing Nicholas to secure the win. The crowd erupts in celebration. However, Noah's attention shifts when she sees images on her phone that strongly suggest her boyfriend has been cheating on her with her own best friend. Furious and heartbroken, she begins drinking heavily and dancing recklessly. Nicholas notices Noah dancing with another man and reacts angrily. He storms over and scolds her, telling her to have some self-respect, insisting that he sees her as his sister and refuses to watch her degrade herself. Noah fires back, explaining that she allowed the man close on purpose, so she could send photos to her unfaithful boyfriend as revenge. Seizing the moment, Nicholas suggests she send a picture with him instead. Surprised but intrigued, Noah agrees. Afterward, Nicholas asks Noah to sit in his race car and wait for Gina. Fascinated by the vehicle, Noah climbs into the driver's seat. Moments later, Ronnie pulls up beside her in his own car. Mistaking him for part of Nicholas's team, Noah is caught off guard when he starts talking. She tells him she's nobody special, just a regular girl. Ronnie smirks and lies, claiming that Nicholas is about to lose a bet, and that if Noah doesn't race now, Nicholas will lose his prized red car. He taunts her, saying she'll be given a 5-second advantage. The race begins, but something feels wrong. The cars remain motionless, confusing the spectators and Nicholas alike. Ronnie urges Noah to use the head start. When she finally accelerates, it becomes clear almost instantly that Noah is no amateur. Her control, precision, and confidence reveal years of experience, confirming the significance of the racing photo shown earlier with her father. Panicked, Ronnie tries to force Noah off the track by deliberately colliding with her car. Noah holds her ground, outmaneuvers him, and defeats him decisively. When she steps out of the car, the crowd erupts, celebrating her unexpected victory. Nicholas, however, is furious, not at her talent, but because her involvement has cost him the race. Ronnie demands the car keys from Nicholas, claiming the bet was always meant to be between the two of them. Left with no choice, Nicholas hands him over. Humiliated, Ronnie lashes out verbally at Noah. Nicholas snaps and attacks Ronnie violently to defend her. Watching the fight unfold, Noah freezes in terror, overwhelmed by memories of her father's abuse. Gina quickly pulls her away and into a car. Nicholas and his friend follow, and they escape before things spiral further. The next morning, Noah wakes to find a hateful letter from an unknown sender, filled with insults and threats. Disturbed, she shows it to Gina. Elsewhere, Nicholas is asleep on the beach, exhausted. Back at the mansion, Noah's mother asks Emmanuel for his opinion on a dress she plans to wear for an upcoming event. She then quietly asks why he chose to help her in the first place. Emmanuel replies that he fell in love with her instantly and married her out of genuine affection, not pity or charity. The story shifts to Nicholas spending time with his younger half-sister, Maggie, whom he deeply cares for. Maggie, the child of his mother's second marriage, is diabetic, and Nicholas is attentive and protective, showing a softer side rarely seen. That evening, Nicholas returns home and ends up watching an over-the-top action film with Noah, one filled with exaggerated car stunts. He scoffs at the unrealistic driving maneuvers, saying they would be nearly impossible to pull off. Noah calmly disagrees, explaining that the techniques are actually quite simple and begins describing how they could be done. Curious, she asks where he spent the entire day. Nicholas answers vaguely, saying he was with someone important to him. Noah assumes something else entirely, unaware that he is talking about Maggie. The following morning, Noah is outside washing a car when she is caught completely off guard by the sudden arrival of her ex-boyfriend, accompanied by her mother. It becomes clear that Noah's mother is deeply uncomfortable with the growing tension between Noah and Nicholas. To her, Nicholas is nothing more than Noah's stepbrother, and she is determined to prevent anything inappropriate from developing. In an attempt to steer Noah away from him, she tries to revive Noah's relationship with her former boyfriend. Panicking, Noah rushes to Nicholas for help. She explains that she sent a photo of the two of them together to her ex and is terrified he might reveal it, which could cause a scandal, especially since Nicholas is officially considered her brother. When her ex tries to speak with her, Noah deliberately ignores him, while Nicholas subtly provokes and mocks him without fully revealing his identity. Later, Noah receives a bouquet of roses from her mother. As she examines it, she notices a chilling note attached, warning that she will pay for what she has done. Disturbed, Noah confronts her ex about the threatening message, but he denies any involvement and insists he knows nothing about the flowers or the threats. Around the same time, a mysterious figure is seen speaking privately with Ronnie, the racer Noah humiliated during the underground race. The next day, during a family meal, Noah receives yet another threatening message. The sender remains unknown, leaving her increasingly anxious. After breakfast, Noah joins Nicholas and his friends for a drive. When Mario asks how she became such an expert driver, another girl interrupts, casually revealing that Noah's father was once a well-known racing figure who taught her himself. When Mario asks what happened to her father, Noah shuts down and simply says he's no longer around. Their drive leads them to an illegal street fight. Noah immediately grows uneasy, clearly worried about Nicholas. He reassures her, explaining that fighting is how he releases his anger. He steps into the ring and overwhelms his opponent with brutal efficiency. The violence overwhelms Noah, triggering painful memories of her abusive father. Mario tries to comfort her, but Nicholas reacts aggressively and shoves him away. Frightened, Noah begs Nicholas to stay away from her, telling him she can't be around violent men, reminding him that her father was exactly the same. As days pass, Nicholas begins changing. He runs along the shoreline, trying to clear his mind and become a better person. Despite knowing that loving Noah is forbidden and morally complicated, he can no longer deny his feelings for her. One day, Emmanuel speaks privately with Nicholas and reveals troubling information about Noah's father. He explains that the man once tried to harm Noah and relied on violence to solve every conflict. Noah herself testified against him, which led to his imprisonment, but he was released just 2 weeks earlier. Fearing for Noah's safety, Emmanuel asks Nicholas, given his legal background, to help ensure that the man is sent back to prison. Later that night, the same stranger previously seen with Ronnie is spotted sitting in a car outside a house where Noah is attending a party. When Noah stumbles out drunk, Nicholas arrives to take her home. Realizing she left her jacket inside, Noah goes back in, only to be cruelly locked inside a closet as a prank by Nicholas's girlfriend. Trapped in the darkness, Noah relives her childhood trauma. Nicholas arrives just in time, breaks her out, and takes her home, staying by her side through the night as she struggles with fear and panic. The next morning, Nicholas visits his younger sister Maggie in the hospital, and Noah joins him. There, she finally understands the truth. Nicholas participates in street fights not for pleasure, but to earn money from Maggie's medical treatment. Seeing this softer, selfless side of him changes everything for Noah. That evening, the two share a quiet, emotional moment on the beach, where they finally admit their love for one another. However, on their way back, Ronnie suddenly appears and kidnaps Noah, disappearing before Nicholas can react. Nicholas rushes home and alerts Emmanuel and Noah's mother. A detective reviews surveillance footage and quickly identifies Ronnie as the abductor. Soon after, Noah's biological father reveals himself as the mastermind behind the kidnapping. He contacts Noah's mother, demanding a ransom of $1 million. Though they agree to meet, Noah's mother senses that the money is only an excuse, that fear and control are his real goals. She's proven right when he watches them remotely, monitoring their every move. Meanwhile, Nicholas and the detective piece together Ronnie's escape route. Nicholas suddenly remembers that his red car is equipped with a tracking device. Realizing he's been discovered, Noah's father attempts to flee, forcing Noah to drive, while he fires at Nicholas and the detective during a high-speed chase. The pursuit ends at a dead end. At gunpoint, Noah's father orders her to ram Nicholas's car. In a silent moment of understanding, Nicholas and Noah exchange a look, both remembering the impossible car maneuvers from the film they once watched together. Noah accelerates, executing the spinning move. As she ducks, the detective fires, killing her father and ending the threat once and for all. Noah's mother breaks down in relief, holding her daughter close. Emmanuel embraces Nicholas in an emotional gesture of gratitude and acceptance. In the closing moments, Noah's mother asks Emmanuel for a divorce, removing the final barrier between Noah and Nicholas. The film ends with Nicholas fully transformed, no longer driven by violence, but by love. Analysis. What if the one person you're warned to stay away from is the one who understands you the most? Some movies gently invite you in. This one grabs you by the collar and doesn't let go. My Fault isn't just another teen romance. It's a story built on tension, the kind that makes every glance feel dangerous and every choice feel like it could ruin everything. On the surface, it looks familiar. A new girl, a new home, a forbidden connection. But beneath that, it's fueled by anger, trauma, desire, and the thrill of doing exactly what you're not supposed to do. What makes this movie stand out is not subtlety, it's intensity. The emotions are loud. The conflicts are messy. The attraction feels inevitable and reckless at the same time. And that's exactly why millions of viewers couldn't look away. This isn't a story about perfect love. It's about collision between two broken people, between control and freedom, between logic and impulse. In this video, we're breaking down My Fault completely. What it's really about, why it became such a viral obsession, the meaning behind its ending, the hidden details most viewers missed, and whether it deserves the hype or not. So buckle up, because this story moves fast, hits hard, and leaves emotional skid marks behind. Released in 2023, My Fault arrived quietly, and then completely took over streaming conversations. This Spanish romantic drama blends passion, rebellion, and danger into a sleek, modern love story that feels tailor-made for binge-watch culture. It's adapted from a massively popular young adult novel, which means it already came with an emotionally invested fan base, and the film knew exactly how to tap into that energy. The story is set across two sharply contrasting worlds. On one side, we have luxury, massive houses, expensive cars, and carefully controlled lives. On the other, we're thrown into underground street racing, late-night chaos, and raw emotional freedom. That clash isn't just visual, it's the heartbeat of the movie. At the center is Noah, a fiercely independent teenager forced to leave her old life behind and move into a world she doesn't trust and doesn't belong to. In this new environment, she encounters someone who challenges her boundaries, her anger, and her sense of control. Without revealing any twists, the premise revolves around a forbidden connection that grows in the worst possible circumstances, where every step closer feels thrilling and dangerous. My Fault doesn't promise comfort. It promises intensity, temptation, and emotional risk. And from the very beginning, it makes sure you know exactly what kind of ride you're on. At first glance, My Fault looks like a romance, but calling it just a romance would be a mistake. This film lives at the intersection of romantic drama, teen rebellion, and psychological tension. Love isn't soft here. It's sharp, volatile, and often destructive. Every emotional beat is pushed to the edge, making the story feel less like a love story and more like a slow-motion crash you can't stop watching. One of the film's strongest themes is forbidden desire. Not the fairy tale kind, but the kind that comes with guilt, consequences, and inner conflict. The movie constantly asks, if something feels real, does that make it right? Another major theme is trauma. Both central characters are shaped by emotional scars, and instead of healing each other, they initially use anger, control, and risk as coping mechanisms. Love becomes less about comfort and more about escape. There's also a strong undercurrent of control versus freedom. Rules, wealth, and expectations push against rebellion, speed, and chaos. This tension fuels nearly every decision in the film, making emotions feel raw and impulsive rather than calculated. Tonally, the movie is intense, moody, and unapologetically dramatic. It's designed for viewers who enjoy emotional highs and lows, especially younger audiences who connect with stories about identity, rebellion, and feeling misunderstood. My Fault doesn't aim for subtlety. It leans fully into emotion, temptation, and conflict, and whether you love it or hate it depends on how much intensity you're willing to embrace. Noah's life changes overnight. She's forced to leave behind everything familiar and move into a world that doesn't feel like hers, a world of wealth, rules, and emotional distance. From the moment she steps into this new house, it's clear she doesn't belong there, and she doesn't plan to pretend otherwise. That tension becomes even sharper when she meets Nick, her new stepbrother. He's reckless, emotionally guarded, and already walking a dangerous line. Their first interactions aren't flirtatious, they're hostile. Sharp words, power struggles, and unspoken resentment define the early dynamic. But conflict has a way of turning into curiosity. As they're forced into the same space, cracks begin to show. Beneath Nick's aggression is anger shaped by past violence and loss. Beneath Noah's defiance is fear of losing control, of being trapped, of becoming vulnerable. What starts as resistance slowly transforms into attraction. Not a gentle one, but a volatile pull neither of them wants to admit. Every choice they make pushes them closer, even as external pressures and personal demons pull them apart. Street racing, secrets, and emotional explosions blur the line between thrill and danger. The deeper they go, the more obvious it becomes. This relationship isn't just risky, it's combustible. By the time consequences start catching up, Noah is forced to confront the central question of the film. Is passion worth the chaos it brings, or is walking away the only real act of strength? This isn't a story driven by coincidence. Every escalation is the result of choice, and every choice comes with a price. The ending of My Fault doesn't give you the comfort of a clean, perfect resolution, and that's exactly the point. By the final moments, everything that Noah and Nick have been avoiding finally catches up with them. The tension, the secrets, the emotional damage, none of it can be ignored anymore. What once felt thrilling now feels heavy. What actually happens is simple on the surface, but complex underneath. Noah and Nick acknowledge their feelings, but they also recognize the truth they've been running from. Love alone doesn't erase chaos. Their connection is real, but it exists inside a storm of unresolved trauma, dangerous choices, and emotional instability. The ending isn't about winning or losing love. It's about choosing awareness over impulse. Symbolically, this final chapter represents growth. For the first time, the characters pause instead of accelerating. Throughout the film, speed, emotional and literal, has been their escape. In the end, slowing down becomes the hardest, bravest choice. There's also intentional ambiguity. The movie doesn't tell us exactly what the future holds, and that open-endedness mirrors real life. Some relationships don't end because love disappears. They end because continuing would mean self-destruction. So if the ending feels unresolved, that's because it's meant to be. My Fault closes not with certainty, but with the understanding that sometimes the most meaningful endings are the ones that force you to think rather than celebrate. My Fault may look straightforward on the surface, but beneath the intensity and drama, the film is quietly layered with symbolism, and most viewers miss it on the first watch. Let's start with the most obvious symbol: cars and racing. Street racing isn't just a hobby for Nick, it's a language. Speed represents control. When everything else in his life feels unstable, driving fast, is the only place where he decides the outcome. Every race mirrors his emotional state, reckless, dangerous, and driven by impulse rather than logic. Now look at the house. It's massive, beautiful, and suffocating. Instead of feeling safe, it feels cold and isolating, a visual metaphor for wealth without warmth. Noah's discomfort in that space reflects how trapped she feels emotionally, surrounded by rules that don't protect her, only restrict her. Pay attention to body language early in the film. Before any romantic tension is acknowledged, the camera repeatedly frames Noah and Nick in mirrored positions, leaning the same way, standing apart, but facing each other, sharing prolonged silences. These moments quietly foreshadow their inevitable pull long before either character admits it. Costumes tell a story too. Noah's wardrobe slowly evolves, from defensive, practical clothing to more expressive choices, reflecting her emotional exposure. Nick, on the other hand, stays visually rigid for much longer, reinforcing how resistant he is to vulnerability. Even the lighting plays a role. Warm tones appear during moments of emotional honesty, while cooler, harsher lighting dominates scenes driven by anger or denial. None of these details are accidental. They're subtle signals guiding the viewer's emotions, making the story feel intense even when characters say very little. My Fault doesn't just tell its story through dialogue. It whispers it through visuals, rewarding viewers who look just a little closer. Behind the emotional chaos of My Fault lies a production story that explains exactly why this movie connected so strongly with its audience. The film is adapted from a hugely popular young adult novel that originally gained massive traction online. Long before cameras started rolling, the story already had a loyal fan base deeply invested in its characters, emotions, and forbidden romance. That built-in anticipation played a major role in the movie's explosive release. Casting was a critical decision. The lead actors were chosen not just for looks, but for their ability to project raw tension and volatility. Their chemistry wasn't accidental. It was tested extensively, because without it, the entire film would collapse. To prepare for the racing sequences, the actors went through driving training and physical conditioning to make the underground racing world feel grounded rather than staged. Many of the close-up driving shots were performed practically to preserve realism. Interestingly, several moments from the original book were either toned down or removed entirely. Some scenes were rewritten to better suit a visual medium, while others were adjusted to meet streaming guidelines without losing emotional impact. One fun detail fans love: many of the most intense scenes were shot late at night to preserve a raw, exhausted energy, something the actors have mentioned helped them tap into their characters' emotional states. And finally, the movie's overwhelming popularity didn't go unnoticed. Its success directly sparked conversations about continuing the story, turning My Fault from a single adaptation into a potential franchise. Sometimes a movie feels personal because it is built on passion, fan loyalty, and just enough risk to make it unforgettable. To really understand My Fault, it helps to see where it stands among other films in the same space, because this story didn't appear in a vacuum. At its core, My Fault belongs to the forbidden romance tradition. It shares DNA with movies like After, where passion overrides reason, and love grows in emotionally unsafe territory. But while After leans into fantasy, My Fault pushes harder on volatility. Its romance feels messier, louder, and more combustible. It also echoes the energy of films like The Kissing Booth, but with the innocence stripped away. Where those films soften consequences with humor, My Fault replaces it with tension and danger. The stakes feel higher, and the emotional fallout feels heavier. There's also a trace of romance thrillers like Fear, where attraction and menace coexist. My Fault flirts with that line, making viewers question whether desire is pulling the characters together or pushing them toward disaster. Where the film succeeds is intensity. It commits fully to emotional chaos and never pretends its relationship is healthy. Where it falls short is depth. It sometimes chooses adrenaline over reflection, sensation over insight. Compared to others in the genre, My Fault doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. Instead, it spins it faster, louder, and closer to the edge, knowing that for its audience, feeling something strongly matters more than feeling something safely. It's not the most original love story, but it might be one of the most unapologetic. When My Fault was released, the reaction was immediate and intense. Audiences didn't just watch it, they latched onto it. Social media filled with edits, reaction videos, and heated debates. Viewers praised the chemistry, the emotional tension, and the addictive pacing. For many fans, it wasn't about realism, it was about how strongly the movie made them feel. Among younger audiences especially, the film became a streaming phenomenon. It was shared, clipped, rewatched, and talked about constantly, turning it into a viral hit almost overnight. Critics, however, told a very different story. Many pointed out familiar tropes, thin character development, and the film's willingness to romanticize toxic behavior without fully addressing its consequences. Some felt the movie prioritized shock and passion over emotional responsibility. And that's where My Fault becomes truly interesting. It's a divisive film, loved by audiences, questioned by critics. Not because it fails completely, but because it refuses to play it safe. It leans into discomfort, obsession, and emotional instability, elements that naturally split opinion. Is it underrated? Not exactly. Is it overrated? Depends on what you expect. What's undeniable is this: My Fault struck a nerve. And in a crowded streaming landscape, provoking strong reactions, positive or negative, is often the clearest sign of success. People may argue about its quality, but they rarely forget it. So, where does My Fault ultimately land? This is a film driven by emotion over logic, intensity over subtlety, and that's both its greatest strength and its biggest weakness. On the plus side, the chemistry is undeniable. The pacing keeps you hooked, and the emotional stakes rarely dip. The movie understands its audience and commits fully to its tone, delivering a story that's messy, provocative, and hard to stop watching once it starts. But it's not without flaws. The characters don't always grow as deeply as they could. Some conflicts rely on familiar tropes, and the film occasionally mistakes emotional chaos for emotional depth. It asks big questions about love and danger, but doesn't always stay long enough to answer them. That said, My Fault knows exactly what it wants to be. If you're looking for a safe, comforting romance, this isn't it. If you want a story that explores obsession, rebellion, and the thrill of forbidden connection, you'll likely be hooked. This movie is best suited for viewers who enjoy high-stakes romance, emotional intensity, and characters who make imperfect, sometimes frustrating choices. Final verdict? My Fault isn't trying to be timeless cinema. It's trying to make you feel something right now. And for the audience it's made for, it absolutely succeeds. Reviews. No wordplay intended. But with blended families becoming more common, it was probably inevitable that cinema would latch onto this territory. Even when everything is technically legal, there's still an undeniable sense of discomfort, and the film leans heavily into that tension. It toys with the audience repeatedly, teasing moments that almost cross the line, then pulling back, only to circle right back again. Over and over. There's an old saying about love involving constant friction. Whether it exists outside German culture, I'm not sure, but the idea fits here perfectly. The trope is familiar. The tough, arrogant guy softened by the emotionally perceptive girl. Both impossibly attractive, of course. You can see where it's heading from miles away, yet somehow the finale still manages to raise an eyebrow. At times, it feels as though someone finally snapped after years of criticism aimed at the After franchise and thought, let's make something that makes those movies look better by comparison. Mission accomplished. The story follows Noah, a teenager uprooted from her life and forced to move into her mother's extravagant new home with her wealthy husband, and his son, Nick. From the outset, the two clash. He's smug and self-assured. She's sharp and unimpressed. That should be the end of it. Naturally, it isn't. What follows is nearly 2 hours of one of the most formula-driven romantic dramas imaginable, yet somehow packed with car races, underground fights, explicit romance, family melodrama, beach hookups, and even a kidnapping. It sounds absurd, but that's exactly what unfolds. This overstuffed plot comes straight from the source novel, and while a healthy budget was clearly thrown at the production, very little of it seems to have gone into sharpening the script or elevating the performances. Noah's actress occasionally recalls a young Shailene Woodley, but Nick's character is little more than a hollow, overinflated cliché. I'm well aware I'm not the intended audience, but it's genuinely puzzling who is. The film feels shallow, repetitive, and oddly proud of its own excess. It's startling that this ended up as a highlighted streaming release. Despite name-dropping literary giants like Austen, Shakespeare, and Lorca, what's delivered bears no trace of that pedigree. At its core, the plot centers on a young man falling for his teenage stepsister, set against a fantasy-like coastal paradise where hostility inexplicably turns into obsession almost overnight. Much of the runtime plays out like a chaotic romantic comedy. Wild parties, reckless driving, pool shoving, fist fights, until the film abruptly swerves into darker territory. Suddenly, Noah's unstable, violent father is released from prison and becomes a very real threat, aiming to harm his own daughter. From that point on, credibility collapses entirely. The situations, the relationships, the emotional turns, none of it feels grounded or believable. Blame likely lies with the original 2023 Spanish production, now repackaged for a wider audience. If you've seen the English-language version, you already know the setup. A rebellious teen relocated to her mother's new husband's luxurious estate, instantly locking horns with her stepbrother. What begins as irritation quickly escalates into desire, fueled by street racing, illegal fights, and a looming threat from her estranged father seeking vengeance. The result feels less like a film and more like a soap opera turned up to 11, sensational, glossy, and shamelessly indulgent. It recalls the late-night cable era where provocation mattered more than substance. In the absence of a decent street racing blockbuster lately, this may scratch an itch for some viewers, even if it does so clumsily. That said, there's another way to view it. For fans of heightened melodrama, fast pacing, and a hate-to-love dynamic wrapped in danger and desire, this movie delivers exactly what it promises. Inspired by a popular Wattpad novel, it blends romance with action and rarely slows down long enough to be boring. The coastal setting is visually appealing, the energy relentless, and for those already tuned into this genre, it's easy to see the appeal, even if it leaves others shaking their heads in disbelief. Nick is seen by his father, William, as the flawless golden child, but Noah quickly uncovers a very different truth. Beneath the polished surface, Nick is deeply immersed in smoking, partying, illegal street races, and underground fights, choices that repeatedly drag Noah into trouble. What Nick doesn't realize at first is that his strikingly beautiful new stepsister isn't as innocent as she seems. Noah carries emotional baggage and secrets of her own, and when these two collide, sparks fly in an intense and passionate way. Their clash makes for an engaging ride, one that I found genuinely entertaining. I'd easily recommend this film to fans of romance, especially those drawn to darker, edgier love stories, while action lovers may also find something to enjoy. In fact, it works surprisingly well as a date night movie because it tries to offer a little of everything. Watching this film felt like casually picking up a random romance novel and diving in without much expectation. The opening moments lean heavily into familiar cliches, predictable character types, and overused setups dominate at first. Yet somehow, despite all that, the story becomes surprisingly enjoyable. Noah and Nick initially feel more like exaggerated fictional creations than believable teenagers, until the film suddenly allows them moments of authenticity. At that point, I started to believe their connection. Instead of rolling my eyes at a forced romance, I found myself rooting for them. I cared about their relationship and didn't want things to fall apart. I wasn't counting the minutes until their scenes ended, which honestly surprised me. The third act does take a hit when the film slips into a very standard action movie finale, flattening some of the emotional buildup. Still, once everything settles, I was back to hoping for a happy outcome for the couple. I wouldn't even be opposed to a sequel, which the film clearly hints at with its closing moments. Of course, not everyone will get swept up in the story the way I did. Some viewers will likely focus on the many flaws, and they wouldn't be wrong. There are plenty to point out. But if you approach this film looking for light, escapist entertainment, you might find yourself in the right mindset to enjoy it. Yes, I watched the entire movie and found myself reasonably entertained. It's hard not to be, considering it follows the classic romantic formula. Two attractive leads clash, fall deeply in love, face obstacles, and eventually reach a blissful resolution. At the same time, it's unapologetically cliché. The tough, arrogant girl and the obnoxious bad boy are thrown together, only for both to reveal soft hearts and conveniently tragic pasts that explain everything. The movie is clearly designed for teenagers and young adults who fantasize about luxury cars, wild pool parties, excessive drinking, and risky thrills like illegal street racing and secret fight clubs. Those latter elements feel deliberately added to appeal to action-seeking viewers who might otherwise dismiss the romance-heavy storyline. Noah's traumatic backstory could have added meaningful depth, but the film pushes it too far near the end. When her father re-enters the story as a violent ex-con driven by revenge, the narrative crosses into absurd territory. The only part of the finale that feels genuinely satisfying is the high-energy car racing through the scenic streets and marina areas of a Spanish coastal city. As a fairly boring adult, I'm clearly not the target audience for this movie, so why did I watch it? Sometimes it's nice to surrender to something simple and familiar, no matter how predictable it may be. I'm human, after all. Based on a popular Wattpad trilogy, the story centers on Noah, a teenage girl forced to leave her old life behind and move in with her mother's wealthy new husband. This drastic change introduces her to an entirely new environment filled with unfamiliar faces, but it's her stepbrother Nick who draws her attention most strongly. As they navigate the awkwardness of a blended family alongside their personal struggles, their bond slowly intensifies. Nick is portrayed as reckless and indulgent, drawn to partying, gambling, fights, fast cars, and fleeting relationships, while Noah is shown as fiercely independent and self-assured. Despite being complete opposites, their chemistry is undeniable, and their shared screen time keeps the dynamic engaging. In his directorial debut, Domingo Gonzalez aims to honor the source material, but the film suffers from an overload of subplots that pull focus away from the central romance. There's a psychological angle involving a threatening figure haunting Noah, alongside a separate storyline about a young girl with serious health problems. These side narratives add confusion rather than depth and contribute little to the emotional core of the film. Frequent tonal shifts disrupt the pacing, making the overall experience feel uneven. Still, across its nearly 2-hour runtime, the movie manages to hold attention thanks to Nick's chaotic lifestyle and the evolving romance between him and Noah, which remains the heart of the story. The film's finale leans heavily on a high-speed car chase, injecting a burst of chaos and momentum that briefly elevates the energy. Nicole Wallace and Gabriel Guevara command the screen with a presence that's hard to ignore, while Marta Hazes and Yvonne Sanchez bring a believable stability to the parental roles. Even though the movie struggles with inconsistent tone and a scattered narrative, its target Gen Z audience will likely embrace it, largely thanks to the soft, affectionate spark between the two leads. Now, where do I even start with my fault, 2023? If it were possible, I'd happily give it 0 stars, but since that's not an option, half a star will have to do. This was less a movie experience and more an endurance test. The premise sounds promising enough. Noah is forced to abandon her familiar life, friends, boyfriend, comfort, to move in her mother's new husband's lavish mansion. Drama seems inevitable, right? Unfortunately, the execution collapses almost immediately. From the very first encounter between Noah and her new stepbrother Nick, the tension feels forced rather than compelling. What's meant to be a forbidden romance quickly devolves into something resembling a melodramatic soap opera, complete with exaggerated hostility and immature outbursts. Their rebellious streaks, come off less like passion and more like petulance. And instead of emotional investment, the film inspired a growing sense of irritation. Their relationship supposedly turns their lives upside down, but the real tragedy is the time lost watching it unfold. If secondhand embarrassment is your thing, this film may be your idea of fun. That said, Spanish romance dramas often know how to strike a chord with younger audiences, and My Fault does hit certain familiar notes. The story follows Noah as she adapts to life in a sprawling mansion and crosses paths with Nick, her law student by day, street racer by night, stepbrother. Despite their clashing personalities and the obvious taboo surrounding their connection, the two gravitate toward each other. The film piles on elements: illegal racing circuits, family conflicts, and absent father resurfacing with ill intentions, ensuring that there's rarely a quiet moment. Visually and structurally, the movie stays busy. Nicole Wallace delivers a convincing arc, evolving from an unsure newcomer into a more self-assured character. Gabriel Guevara fits comfortably into the familiar, troubled bad boy with a hidden heart mold, and together, their chemistry carries much of the film's appeal. Add luxury cars, extravagant interiors, and a glossy cast, and it's easy to see why many viewers find it entertaining on a surface level. However, this film also embodies many of the cliches that dominate Spanish teen dramas. It exists in a fantasy bubble where real-world concerns are non-existent, and life revolves around parties in upscale villas located in glamour cities. Everyone is effortlessly attractive, financially unbothered, and permanently surrounded by nightlife, fast cars, and designer clothes. Conflict rarely extends beyond romantic rejection or a conveniently villainous antagonist, all of which neatly resolve before the runtime ends. Even the more intimate scenes feel strangely hollow, as if ticking boxes rather than expressing emotion. At its core, My Fault is fast food cinema, designed for quick consumption, not reflection. Unlike true guilty pleasures, it struggles to justify itself even within its own exaggerated universe. The issue isn't just the provocative premise, but the careless way it's handled. The story offers no genuine emotional progression, no believable tension, only a chain of moments engineered to shock rather than resonate. The script seems aware of its own artificiality, yet makes no effort to rise above it. Dialogue lacks substance, and scenes carry little consequence. The performances suffer as a result, creating a noticeable gap between what the characters are meant to feel and what actually comes across. Instead of evoking drama or romance, many moments unintentionally veer into comedy, not by design, but due to the inability to convey authentic emotion. In the end, My Fault may succeed as disposable entertainment for a specific audience, but as a film, it remains shallow, glossy, and ultimately forgettable. The film's cinematography plays it painfully safe, offering nothing beyond the generic visuals typical of forgettable, mass-produced entertainment. There's no distinct visual style or creative ambition that helps it stand out. The soundtrack doesn't do the film any favors either. While the music itself isn't necessarily bad, the way it's edited and placed fails to enhance the story or emotions in any meaningful way. As a result, the entire experience feels flat and uninspired, content with existing on the surface without ever trying to build something memorable underneath. It's not exactly difficult to sit through, especially if you already know what kind of film you're walking into. But once it ends, it leaves no lasting impression. You watch it, react with disbelief at certain choices, and sincerely hope you won't ever need to revisit it again. It's the kind of movie that disappears from your mind almost immediately. Speaking from an Indian perspective, this film feels particularly uncomfortable and unacceptable. In our culture, respect for sisters, including stepsisters, is deeply rooted, and the themes explored here cross a line that many Indian viewers simply won't be able to tolerate. If the story had taken a different direction, perhaps it could have been entertaining, but in its current form, it's something most Indian audiences will outright reject. If you're from India, I genuinely wouldn't recommend watching it. It's a waste of time. There's nothing special here, just a couple of racing scenes, one or two fights, and not much else. This isn't the kind of movie that aligns with our sensibilities. I watched it at triple speed just to get through it, and even that felt like effort. If you do end up watching it, I'd say 1 star is more than generous. Culpa Mia feels like the purest example of modern fanfiction turned into a movie. The premise alone is overflowing with cliches. A girl moves into a new house, ends up living with an absurdly attractive stepbrother, and soon discovers he's a rebellious bad boy with ties to crime. It's the kind of setup that screams Wattpad, and, unsurprisingly, that's exactly where it comes from. Yet, oddly enough, despite how predictable and overused the concept is, it still manages to work on some level. The story itself is extremely average. There's nothing fresh or innovative here, and the narrative follows genre tropes so closely that you can predict nearly every major development long before it happens. Still, it remains oddly watchable. What truly helps the film is its characters, especially Noah, portrayed by Nicole Wallace. Her performance brings sincerity and energy to the role, making the emotional beats feel more believable. The chemistry between the leads is strong, which is crucial for a story like this, and the film fully embraces the sensual and dramatic elements it knows its audience expects. At its core, Culpa Mia is overflowing with fanfic vibes, packed with familiar twists, dramatic confrontations, and exaggerated romance. It doesn't pretend to be anything more than that. If you go in fully aware of what you're getting, it can actually be an enjoyable experience. My Fault exists in an interesting space where controversy and popularity collide. On one hand, it's a successful adaptation of a digital platform story that clearly resonates with a large romantic audience. On the other, it appeals mostly to surface-level criticism rather than deeper cinematic analysis. If you're looking for a youthful, taboo-themed romance with flashy visuals and modern pop aesthetics, this film might be worth your time. However, viewers expecting nuanced storytelling or literary depth will likely find it shallow. The film opens by introducing a young woman preparing to move in with her mother and her new partner, immediately signaling that this will be a teen-focused narrative with romance at its center. We soon learn about her past, including her father's background as a racing driver, which helps explain her rebellious attitude toward the sudden changes in her life. This sense of emotional resistance becomes a key part of her character. Soon after, we're introduced to her mother's wealthy new husband, and the setting shifts to an extravagant mansion filled with luxury. These scenes are visually polished, showcasing the lavish environment in which the characters now live. The introduction of the stepbrother follows, making it clear that romantic tension is inevitable. At this point, the film begins to resemble a Twilight-style story, albeit with its own modern twists. This similarity isn't surprising, considering the source material comes from Mercedes Ron, an author known for writing romance aimed at younger audiences. Personally, I felt that after the halfway mark, the film began to drag. With a runtime close to 2 hours, it becomes repetitive and occasionally dull. That said, in fairness, the movie is competently directed, features solid performances, and includes a few engaging twists that help maintain interest toward the end. And yet, for some viewers, the experience may feel completely different. For them, this movie is energetic from beginning to end, fast-paced, dramatic, and entertaining without a single dull moment. It delivers emotion, intensity, and spectacle in exactly the way such films are meant to. If you connect with its style and themes, you may find yourself enjoying every minute and walking away satisfied. Honestly, I didn't enjoy the racing sequences at all. They felt unnecessary and oddly placed for a movie like this. It was strange to see them included, especially when they didn't add much to the story. That said, it was amusing to catch a reference to War, the Hindi movie, in a Spanish film, although the execution didn't come close to matching the intensity or polish of the original scene. On a lighter note, the performances were solid overall, and seeing Zlatan Ibrahimovic step into acting after retirement was genuinely entertaining. If this is just the beginning, who knows, maybe we're witnessing the birth of a future movie icon. I'm oddly excited about that. My Fault, Culpa Mia, is a 2023 Spanish romantic drama that dives headfirst into teenage rebellion, intense emotions, and complicated family dynamics. Based on the hugely popular Wattpad novel by Mercedes Ron, the film follows Noah, a strong-willed young woman whose life takes an unexpected turn when she moves in with her mother's wealthy new husband. The real complication arises when she finds herself drawn to her new stepbrother, Nick, turning her world upside down. The film leans heavily into emotional tension and the constant push and pull between its leads. There's plenty of drama, longing, and undeniable chemistry. Gabriel Guevara and Nicole Wallace bring a lot of energy and passion to their roles, making their relationship engaging for fans of the original book and lovers of angst-filled romance alike. Visually, the movie looks slick and modern, supported by sharp cinematography and a contemporary soundtrack that fits the mood perfectly. That said, some story elements feel overly familiar. The rich, dangerous boy meets the fiery girl, secrets unravel, and trouble follows close behind. The film fully embraces its melodrama, which will either be part of its charm or a bit too much, depending on your taste. Viewers looking for subtle storytelling may find it exaggerated, but if you enjoy fast-paced romance with a rebellious edge, it delivers plenty of emotional highs and lows. In the end, My Fault doesn't shy away from being dramatic, intense, and unapologetically bold, clearly aimed at fans of forbidden love with a hint of danger. After watching this, I found myself reassessing through my window again, landing somewhere around 3 stars. The male lead in My Fault feels almost absurdly overpowered. He's rich, academically brilliant, a law student, involved in crime, a champion surfer, a racing driver, and even a skilled boxer. At some point, it becomes too much. The female lead isn't much better written. She behaves recklessly, shows little gratitude when helped, and constantly antagonizes dangerous people as if she's immune to consequences. Their relationship development also feels rushed and confusing. Several elements, like car racing and beach intimacy, strongly resemble 3 meters above the sky, yet neither aspect is handled particularly well here. For a story centered on taboo love, it somehow feels surprisingly tame. Even scenes meant to show danger or struggle, such as boxing matches, feel unrealistic. Side characters, especially the ex-boyfriend, exist more as tools than fully developed individuals. The movie has plenty of flaws, and honestly, it's hard to ignore them once you start noticing. Ironically, it was the soundtrack that first convinced me to give this film a chance. Despite its many shortcomings, it's still a light, entertaining watch with strong chemistry between the leads. The step-sibling romance may be uncomfortable for some viewers, including me, but as the story unfolds, their connection becomes compelling enough to keep you watching. With car races, enemies to lovers tension, and trauma-driven backstories, the film isn't groundbreaking, but it is fun, dramatic, and clearly designed to set up a sequel. That said, I genuinely enjoyed this movie more than I expected. Way more. I'd even say it's one of the better modern romance adaptations based on a book. The chemistry, jealousy, intimacy, and emotional beats feel very close to how readers imagine them. The casting works perfectly, and after so many disappointing adaptations of popular novels, this one finally feels like it does the source material some justice. I wasn't a fan of the ending, though. The way the issue with Noah's father was resolved felt unrealistic and rushed. Still, everything else worked so well that I can almost forgive it. A sequel is absolutely necessary because this story clearly isn't finished. I love this movie, truly. I watched it more times than I can count. It has everything. Forbidden teenage romance, fast cars, stunning scenery, great music, intense jealousy, parties, fights, emotional moments, and plenty of heart. I've seen negative reviews, and I honestly don't get them. Give it a chance. You might end up loving it as much as I did. The performances are strong across the board, and everyone brings their character to life convincingly. Thanks for reading my thoughts, and I hope you're having a great day. There's really no better way to start this review than with one simple phrase: muy caliente. I have so much appreciation for Spanish and Latin American films, and international cinema in general, because stories like this would likely lose their spark in the hands of many American studios. Hollywood often feels constrained by awards formulas and oddly selective moral standards. But enough of that tangent. I needed to get it out. I only recently discovered that this film is adapted from a Wattpad novel, which is also available on Kindle. I didn't hesitate to grab a copy, and I can honestly say it was worth it. An update after starting the book, I'm completely hooked. The chemistry between the two leads on the page mirrors the intensity seen on screen and even reminded me of the charge dynamic in Dark Desire, though this story plays things a bit more restrained. Still, there's plenty of room for the passion to grow in potential sequels. What stood out most was how layered Nick's character felt. The script smartly reveals his complexities over time, rather than dumping everything at once. Noah's arc is handled with the same care and the slow burn of their relationship, moving from hostility to attraction, feels deliberately paced. That enemies-to-lovers tension is one of the film's strongest elements. The passion, especially during key moments like the first-party scene, is undeniable and instantly sets the tone. Some moments are bold, almost scandalous, but in a way that feels intentional and earned. The casting deserves real praise. There isn't a weak link here. From the leads to the supporting roles, everyone feels well-matched. Visually, the movie is striking. The cinematography shines, especially during the racing sequences, and the final chase at the docks is genuinely thrilling. The styling and wardrobe choices add to the polished aesthetic, making the entire production feel cohesive and immersive. From start to finish, the film kept me fully engaged, and I'm genuinely excited to see where the story goes next. This feels like a solid win for Spanish cinema. At its core, the film is a romantic drama with strong emotional pull and a pace that keeps you invested. The story blends intensity and vulnerability, and the performances sell both. The leads bring real emotion to their roles, and their on-screen presence adds depth to the narrative. It's the kind of movie that lingers in your mind even after it ends. That said, I want to be fair and honest, especially as someone watching it in its original language with subtitles, which I believe is the best way to experience foreign films. My initial reaction to the female lead wasn't positive. She comes across as immature, overly dramatic, and often rude, and unfortunately, she doesn't evolve much over the course of the story. The male lead, while charismatic, is far from flawless himself. While he's slightly more tolerable, he's still dishonest and emotionally messy. As for their chemistry, personally, I didn't feel it. The shift from mutual dislike to intense obsession happened so abruptly that it's hard to buy into it as genuine love. Lust, sure, that part makes sense. But presenting it as deep romance without meaningful character development feels unearned. I kept watching, hoping for growth or clearer motivations, but they never really arrived. Teen drama can be done well. Other series and films in this genre succeed because the characters grow, become more relatable, and give us reasons to care. Here, the characters often feel like attractive figures going through dramatic motions rather than fully realized people. In the end, it left me feeling that nearly 2 hours might be too much to ask. After reading so many glowing reviews, I can't help but wonder if expectations for romantic films have simply dropped. Platforms like Amazon have mastered the formula of adapting popular online novels into glossy, highly streamed productions. But popularity doesn't always equal depth. Whether this film works for you will likely depend on what you're looking for: pure passion and style, or meaningful character-driven storytelling. I honestly kept asking myself one question while watching this. Why is this movie so overhyped? Why are the leads supposedly madly in love? Why does it feel like underage behavior is being casually glossed over? What was the point of the random street races and sudden fistfights? And most importantly, where was the actual relationship development? On top of that, Amazon kept pushing it like it was some must-watch masterpiece, which made the confusion even worse. What we get instead is instant attraction that magically turns into forever love. I genuinely couldn't find a solid reason for why these two characters were willing to throw their lives away for each other. Noah briefly mentions how girls sometimes fall for bad boys, but nothing about her character felt strong or transformative enough for Nick to suddenly change his entire life. 1 minute after getting beaten up, Nick swears he's done with fighting. The very next scene, he's back throwing punches like nothing happened. And then he's suddenly ready to run away with her? Come on, these two barely had a meaningful conversation beyond surface-level nonsense. It all felt rushed, shallow, and unearned. Culpa Mia, My Fault, is a heated romantic drama centered on forbidden attraction. Directed by Domingo Gonzalez and adapted from Mercedes Ron's wildly popular Wattpad novel, the story follows Noah, who is forced to move in with her mother's new wealthy husband, and his son, Nick. What follows is a forbidden romance surrounded by family tension, secrets, and personal baggage. The biggest strength of the film is undeniably the chemistry between Nicole Wallace and Gabriel Guevara. They carry the movie emotionally, even when the writing doesn't. That said, the narrative leans heavily on familiar tropes and lacks real depth. Fans of the novel and lovers of dramatic romance will probably enjoy the intense stares, heated moments, and glossy visuals. But if you're expecting something deeper than a Wattpad-style fantasy, this might not be for you. If you enjoyed After, Beautiful Disaster, or The Summer I Turned Pretty, chances are you'll have a good time here. Personally, I enjoyed this more than the After series. It had a bit of humor and at least some charm. Still, the biggest issue with these newer romance films is how similar they all feel. Complicated trauma dumped on you instantly, daddy issues, mommy issues, endless drama. It's exhausting. Nothing is allowed to just be simple anymore. One positive: the leads absolutely have chemistry, and the relationship here feels less toxic than what we saw in After. The characters are mostly likable, which helps. Honestly, this would have worked much better as a TV series, where the story and relationships could breathe and develop properly. There's also an obvious influence from step relationship fantasies commonly found online, though the film avoids explicit content. It almost feels like a toned-down blend of 50 Shades of Grey with a Spanish flavor. Instead of explicit scenes, the focus is on rich lifestyles, emotional tension, and the constant build-up toward desire rather than its fulfillment. It's more about wanting than actually doing. Overall, it's a decent time pass. If you miss it, you're not missing much. The movie is pretty mid, and most of the points it earns come from its polished setting and attractive cast. Everyone looks great, and honestly, in this kind of movie, that seems to matter more than it should. That said, it's extremely easy to watch. I wouldn't even be mad giving it a slightly higher score, just because of how effortless it feels. This is the kind of film you put on when you're tired, distracted, and just want something on in the background. No thinking required. The story is exaggerated and unrealistic, but that's clearly part of the appeal. It feels like they tried to mix 3 Steps Above Heaven with Fast and Furious, and ended up with something that doesn't quite have its own identity. I enjoyed most of the main cast, though the villains were forgettable. The friend group dynamics are fun, and you can tell the actors are enjoying themselves. However, the movie tries way too hard to sell the relationship as forbidden when it doesn't actually feel that shocking. Because of that, even moments that are supposed to be tense feel oddly empty, with very little emotional payoff. Still, when I compare it to After, I had a better time here. At least the male lead has presence and charisma. After suffers from a weak, unconvincing main character, which unintentionally makes Culpa Mia look better by comparison. In the end, I wouldn't strongly recommend it, but I wouldn't fully dismiss it either. Watch it if you're in a mood for a glossy fantasy where you imagine yourself as the girl who ends up with a rich, brooding bad boy who falls obsessively in love with you. And let's be honest, that fantasy is exactly what this movie is selling. Let's be honest, this kind of movie rarely surprises anyone. My Fault is a modern romantic comedy that sticks closely to familiar territory. The story is simple, predictable, and packed with exaggerated action scenes that feel more ambitious than necessary. While the film doesn't offer anything groundbreaking and often struggles with its pacing, it still works as casual entertainment if you're just looking to switch your brain off for a while. One thing that does make My Fault stand out from standard rom-coms is how heavily it leans into action. High-energy car chases and dramatic confrontations pop up when you least expect them, adding a dose of excitement to an otherwise straightforward love story. Unfortunately, this doesn't fully make up for the uneven rhythm of the film. Several scenes drag on longer than they should, and the slow pacing frequently undercuts any momentum the story builds. From a technical standpoint, the movie looks polished. The cinematography makes good use of colorful locations, and the visuals do a solid job of reinforcing the romantic mood. The soundtrack is another strong point, supporting emotional moments and adding polish to the overall presentation. On the surface, it's clearly a well-produced film. That said, the acting and writing are where things become divisive. At its worst, the performances feel immature and exaggerated, making it hard to take the characters seriously. Some glowing reviews praising the film as a masterpiece feel wildly overblown, almost as if they're trying to sell something that simply isn't there. The movie borrows heavily from the Fast and Furious playbook, but without the believability or scale to justify it. Rich kids, gang culture, underground racing, and lavish parties all blend together in a way that feels confusing rather than compelling. The adults in the story are almost comically oblivious, which only adds to the sense that logic was sacrificed for drama. At times, the film feels less like a romance and more like chaotic teenage fantasy. If nostalgia is what you're after, older rom-coms handle youthful awkwardness far better. Never Been Kissed, for example, manages charm without constant chaos. There are moments meant to shock, like the storyline involving Noah's biological father, and while those scenes briefly grab attention, they feel more like wake-up calls than meaningful plot developments. Overall, it's hard not to walk away disappointed if you were expecting depth or realism. However, and this is where opinions sharply split, the central romance is undeniably effective for many viewers. The chemistry between the two leads is intense, natural, and clearly the film's biggest strength. Their relationship develops gradually, shaped by attraction and shared emotional baggage, and it feels more playful and balanced than many YA adaptations. The male lead, in particular, avoids the usual controlling trope and instead comes across as flawed but human. The film also benefits from solid supporting performances, especially in the parental roles and the side characters who add romantic tension. While there are obvious nods to Fast and Furious, the action here is at least tied to the personalities of the leads rather than being a hollow imitation. For fans of the book and teen romance dramas, it's easy to see why this adaptation feels addictive. In the end, My Fault is a film that people will either love or completely reject. Some viewers will find it thrilling, sexy, and emotionally engaging, while others, especially older audiences, may find the plot ridiculous and the characters shallow. Personally, I don't fully understand the hype, but I can't deny the spark between the leads is real. That chemistry is what carries the film and explains its popularity more than anything else. The soundtrack is honestly one of the film's strongest elements, far better than the movie itself in many ways. It features several standout tracks that instantly grab attention, including some surprisingly good songs I hadn't heard before. As for the movie, I was genuinely hooked from start to finish. The first installment does a solid job of pulling the audience in, even though I've heard that certain elements from the source material were omitted. Still, it worked well enough to leave me excited for what would come next. Unfortunately, the follow-up films didn't quite live up to the promise of the first. For me, the original movie remains the strongest of the trilogy. The storytelling is straightforward but effective in parts. The characters are clearly defined, and their personalities come across well on screen. One standout moment is the car sequence, which many people, including myself, first encountered through short clips online before watching the full film. Would I recommend this movie? Only to a very specific audience. It's definitely for viewers aged 18 plus who are comfortable with explicit content and controversial relationship dynamics. The storyline isn't for everyone, and that's something worth keeping in mind. At its core, this is a Spanish romantic drama centered on Noah, a teenage girl whose life is turned upside down after her mother remarries. One of the film's biggest strengths is the chemistry between the two leads. What begins as tension and resentment slowly evolves into a charged and engaging connection that keeps viewers watching. Visually, the film is quite striking, featuring attractive locations and polished cinematography that elevate the viewing experience. Beneath the surface romance, the story touches on forbidden love, complicated family relationships, and personal development, adding some emotional depth. That said, the plot doesn't offer many surprises. Anyone familiar with romantic dramas will likely predict where the story is headed. Overall, the film delivers an emotionally charged experience that blends romance, drama, and youthful rebellion. While it's far from perfect and often predictable, it succeeds in appealing to fans of intense romantic dramas. For some, it will be an engaging, guilty pleasure. For others, a frustrating and overhyped watch. The film beautifully captures themes of love, redemption, and emotional growth in a way that feels sincere and easy to connect with. What truly stands out is the undeniable chemistry between the lead actors. It feels natural, intense, and pulls the audience straight into their emotional journey. Every interaction carries weight, supported by expressive performances and dialogue that lingers long after the scene ends. While the romantic foundation of the story may feel familiar, the film elevates it through unexpected turns and heartfelt moments that maintain constant engagement. There's never a dull stretch. The narrative flows smoothly and keeps viewers invested throughout. Visually, the movie is striking. The cinematography is polished and immersive, with carefully framed shots that enhance the emotional atmosphere. Lighting choices and background music are used thoughtfully, adding depth and amplifying key moments without overpowering them. What truly sets Culpa apart is its ability to blend passion with meaningful reflection. It explores relationships, self-awareness, and the consequences of choices in a way that feels genuine rather than dramatic for the sake of it. For anyone who enjoys emotionally driven romance with strong character focus, this film is an easy recommendation. Personally, I really enjoyed the movie, especially the connection between the lead couple. The story remains engaging from start to finish, never once feeling slow or repetitive. One of the biggest highlights is clearly Nicholas. His expressions, his jealousy, his affection, and his protective nature all feel perfectly balanced, making his character incredibly compelling. The ending, where Noah hints that this is only the beginning of their journey, left me genuinely hoping for a second installment. It's refreshing to watch a complete love story where the focus stays firmly on the couple, without unnecessary subplots or forced twists. That simplicity actually makes the film more soothing and enjoyable. I highly recommend My Fault. It's absolutely worth watching. Introduction My Fault, Culpa is a striking romantic drama that dives deep into the complexities of human emotions and relationships. Guided by confident direction and a clear artistic vision, the film blends an engaging narrative with strong visuals and layered characters, resulting in a memorable cinematic experience. Plot and storyline at its core, the film revolves around themes of guilt, forgiveness, and personal redemption. The story follows a protagonist whose life is shaken by a life-altering incident, forcing him to confront his past and wrestle with overwhelming remorse. As the narrative unfolds, we witness his internal struggle, torn between self-condemnation and the desire for peace and understanding. The screenplay is carefully structured, with each scene contributing meaningfully to the overall arc. The pacing strikes a thoughtful balance, allowing emotional moments to breathe while maintaining steady momentum. Flashbacks are woven in seamlessly, offering insight into past events and deepening the emotional context without disrupting the flow of the story. Character development, one of the film's strongest aspects, is its well-crafted characters. The central character is portrayed with emotional depth, making his journey both believable and relatable. His inner conflict feels raw and honest, encouraging empathy rather than judgment. The supporting cast also shines, each character bringing their own emotional layers and motivations that enrich the story. The relationships depicted feel authentic and complex, reflecting the imperfect nature of real human connections. Interactions are emotionally charged yet grounded, adding credibility and resonance to the narrative. Visual and cinematic excellence. From a visual standpoint, My Fault is impressive. The cinematography is thoughtfully executed, using framing, color palettes, and lighting to mirror the characters' emotional states. Softer tones enhance moments of intimacy, while darker visuals effectively represent emotional conflict and uncertainty. Production design further strengthens the storytelling. Every setting feels intentional, from confined personal spaces that reflect inner chaos to open landscapes, symbolizing clarity and reflection. These visual choices quietly reinforce the emotional themes without drawing attention away from the characters. Sound and music. The film's sound design and musical score are subtle yet powerful. The soundtrack complements the emotional tone perfectly, enhancing pivotal scenes without becoming intrusive. Music is used sparingly, allowing silence and ambient sound to carry emotion when needed. Together, the sound elements create a rich atmosphere that supports the film's emotional core and leave a lasting impression. The film's immersive atmosphere is heightened through subtle details like ambient natural sounds, distant murmurs of conversation, and the protagonist's labored breathing. These elements pull the viewer directly into the experience, making it feel as though the audience is living the moments alongside the characters rather than simply watching them unfold. Themes and messages. My Fault does not hesitate to explore heavy and emotionally complex ideas. At its core, the story examines guilt, how it lingers, shapes identity, and slowly consumes a person from within. Alongside this, the film places strong emphasis on redemption and the difficult journey toward forgiveness, both from others and from oneself. Despite the emotional weight, the narrative ultimately leans toward hope. It suggests that even when guilt feels overwhelming, healing and second chances are still possible. This message is delivered with sincerity, leaving a strong emotional imprint long after the credits roll. Conclusion. Overall, My Fault stands out as an emotionally charged cinematic experience. Its engaging storyline, expressive performances, striking visuals, and effective sound design come together to form a film that is both moving and thought-provoking. It serves as a reminder of cinema's ability to explore deep human emotions and tell stories that feel personal and relatable. For viewers who enjoy films that challenge feelings and linger in the mind, this one is worth watching. That said, My Fault is also a Spanish teen romantic drama that blends familiar tropes. It feels like a fusion of glamorous romance, rebellious youth culture, and high-energy action. The story follows Noah, who is forced to leave behind her life, friends, and boyfriend to move in with her mother's wealthy new husband, and his son, Nick. Nick fits the classic bad boy with a soft side archetype, and their relationship unfolds as a forbidden step-sibling romance surrounded by crime, excess, and privileged chaos. The plot itself is far from realistic, and the dialogue can feel flat at times. However, the chemistry between the leads helps carry the film, making it entertaining despite its flaws. It may not appeal to everyone, but certainly kept me engaged. Culpa focuses heavily on romance, passion, secrecy, and emotional conflict. The forbidden relationship between Noah and her stepbrother adds tension to an already complicated web of family issues and hidden pasts. Their love story introduces suspense and emotional stakes, especially as unresolved histories begin to threaten their fragile connection. The film highlights how unchecked emotions and reckless passion can deeply impact families, for better or worse. For fans of romantic dramas, this is a story that's hard to ignore. To be fair, the movie is undeniably entertaining, even if it feels overloaded at times. It juggles multiple plot lines, starting over in a new life, forbidden romance, trauma from the past, underground racing, and violent confrontations. At moments, it lacks cohesion, possibly made more noticeable through dubbing. I'd honestly be curious to rewatch it in its original language for a different experience. One aspect that did make me uncomfortable was how the film not only romanticizes the step-sibling relationship, but also overlooks the issue of the female lead being underage for much of the story. That element feels questionable and hard to ignore. Knowing it was adapted from a book does make me interested in reading the source material to see how these themes were originally handled. Judged as a slice-of-life drama, the film falls short, mainly because it operates more like a modern fairy tale. It borrows heavily from familiar myths. The poor girl entering a world of luxury, the troubled prince with a hidden heart of gold, the heroine outperforming hardened men in high-risk arenas, and love triumphing over danger. It's exaggerated, glossy, and unrealistic, but that's part of its appeal. Technically, the film is competently made, fast-paced, and rarely boring. While the performances may lack subtlety, the cast is well-chosen, attractive, and undeniably convincing in their romantic chemistry. The level of intimacy, visual polish, and fantasy elements elevate the experience, especially for viewers looking for an emotional and visually appealing romantic escape. If expectations are kept in check, My Fault can be an enjoyable watch, particularly for a planned romantic movie night. Despite its issues, it delivers drama, passion, and spectacle, making it worthy of a thoughtful rating and leaving room for anticipation if the story continues in future chapters. This review takes a refreshingly honest approach by setting expectations straight from the beginning. The film doesn't aim for grounded realism or deep dramatic authenticity. Instead, it leans fully into a heightened, almost fairy tale style of storytelling. Much like familiar stories such as Cinderella or Little Red Riding Hood, the characters fall into recognizable archetypes, and the narrative embraces that fantasy rather than resisting it. While the movie heavily relies on well-known tropes, it delivers them with enough energy and flair to remain entertaining. Performance-wise, the leads may not offer deeply layered or subtle acting, but their on-screen chemistry and natural charm do much of the heavy lifting. The connection between the main characters feels believable in an emotional sense, even when the story itself stretches logic. As a result, the film works best when viewed with relaxed expectations and a willingness to enjoy a light, romantic escape rather than a serious cinematic statement. My Fault, also known as Culpa Mia, packs several genres into a single, fast-moving experience. Family conflict, teenage rebellion, romance, and action all collide at once. If you strip away an adult, critical lens, the core plot is actually quite engaging. It's an emotional blend of drama and thrills, with enough twists to keep viewers watching. As a Wattpad adaptation, it finally feels like one of those stories made the leap to film with care and enthusiasm. On a personal level, the relationship between Noah and Nick is one of the movie's strongest elements. Their dynamic is intense, emotional, and central to the story's appeal. The casting feels well chosen, and while the storyline follows a familiar path, the emotions sell it. The soundtrack adds to the mood, and the development of relationships, though rushed, still manages to feel sincere. Noah's character, in particular, stands out as a confident, unapologetic presence who refuses to be boxed into the usual shy girl stereotype, which is refreshing. That said, the pacing is undeniably chaotic. The film moves at breakneck speed. Romance, action, conflict, and drama unfold almost back-to-back with little breathing room. One moment characters are kissing, the next they're racing cars or throwing punches. The movie is packed with cliches and occasionally dips into awkward or cringeworthy territory. Very little feels genuinely new, and some elements, like the oddly unrealistic dog, break immersion entirely. The dialogue often feels shallow or incomplete, as if important conversations were skipped altogether. At times, it resembles a collage of several romantic films stitched together. Because of this, reactions to the movie will vary wildly. For some viewers, especially younger audiences, it may be a thrilling and addictive watch. For others, it could feel like one of the weaker films of the year, overstuffed, rushed, and emotionally underdeveloped. Personally, it's hard to recommend without reservations. Still, the film has undeniable appeal. The mix of forbidden street racing, underground fights, and a romance that shouldn't exist creates a compelling hook. The chemistry between the leads is strong, and the supporting cast adds texture to the world. Despite its flaws, the movie rarely becomes boring, blending action and romance in a way that keeps the momentum going. It's engaging enough to spark interest in the source material, and with future adaptations already approved, it's clear the story has found its audience. In the end, My Fault isn't a perfect film. Far from it, but it's memorable. Whether you see it as messy fun or an overhyped disappointment depends entirely on what you expect going in. Viewed as a stylized romantic fantasy rather than a serious drama, it manages to leave an impression and, at the very least, gives viewers something to talk about long after it's over. The film sparks deep thoughts about responsibility, forgiveness, and the complicated nature of human connections. Rather than simply telling a story, it nudges viewers to look inward and reflect on their own choices and relationships. That emotional pull is what lifts the movie beyond being just good and pushes it towards something more memorable. In that sense, My Fault feels less like a standard film and more like an emotional ride, capturing raw human feelings through bold storytelling, strong performances, and themes that linger. It's the kind of movie that stays with you after the screen fades to black, making it a compelling watch for those who enjoy emotionally driven cinema. That said, not everyone will see it the same way. At times, the film feels oddly put together, almost as if it's operating on a tight budget. The background music often feels misplaced and clashes with the emotional tone of certain scenes. The story leans heavily on familiar tropes, making parts of it feel recycled. The main character fits the well-worn mold of a privileged teenager resisting a relationship with her wealthy father, while the mother character comes across as another predictable figure pushing a forced family dynamic. The central plot revolving around step-siblings stuck in a love-hate relationship has been explored countless times in teen dramas, and here it doesn't always feel fresh. For some viewers, this makes the movie hard to finish, let alone rate highly. On the opposite end of the spectrum, many viewers found the film surprisingly addictive. The drama is intense, the cast is visually striking, and the emotional tension between the leads is undeniably strong. Their shared looks and subtle gestures add layers of passion that pull you in. The cinematography is polished and visually appealing, and the dialogue keeps the story moving in an engaging way. The chemistry between the characters is a major highlight, keeping audiences hooked from scene to scene. While the step-sibling angle may feel controversial, the fact that they're not related by blood helps some viewers look past it and focus on the emotional connection instead. Still, others remain unconvinced by the praise. For them, the movie feels slow and unexciting, with a plot that doesn't fully trust itself. Extra subplots are added that feel unnecessary and unconvincing, while the soundtrack constantly interrupts rather than enhances the experience. There are moments that attempt to imitate high-octane action similar to racing franchises, but these sequences feel forced and out of place. The mystery elements are overly dramatic and lean into excessive cheesiness, making it hard to take the story seriously. Some viewers felt misled by glowing reviews, questioning whether they were watching the same movie everyone else seemed to love. There's also a middle ground perspective. The film starts strong, especially with the confident portrayal of the female lead and the believable chemistry between the step-siblings. Supporting characters display emotions that help reinforce the storyline, but the overall setting feels oddly unrealistic, almost like a stylized world where wealthy teens race cars and fight without real consequences. While the parents appear concerned, their reactions often feel more like scripted roles than genuine parental behavior. Even so, the movie offers enough twists and dramatic turns to make it an acceptable watch if you're simply looking to pass the time. For harsher critics, the film is overloaded with cliches and fragmented storylines that don't always make sense. The acting feels weak, though much of the blame seems to lie with an awkward, cringe-heavy script. Watching it can feel exhausting, requiring breaks just to get through the awkward moments. Even the visual effects fail to impress, though by that point, it hardly matters given the overall chaos of the narrative. On the brighter side, some viewers who usually dislike similar franchises found themselves unexpectedly enjoying this one. While it borrows elements from many familiar films, it manages to remain entertaining. The story doesn't feel as toxic as comparable titles, and the chemistry between Gabriel and Nicole stands out as one of the film's strongest points. For these fans, the movie is genuinely enjoyable and doesn't deserve the harsh criticism it often receives. They see it as a solid first installment and hope future sequels continue without leaning into unhealthy dynamics. In the end, My Fault sits in a strange space, not terrible, not outstanding. It has its flaws, but it also has moments that work surprisingly well. If you go in without high expectations, you might find parts of it enjoyable. It may not be unforgettable for everyone, but it's not a complete waste of time either. The plot is painfully predictable and loaded with cliches, but honestly, that's exactly what I expected, so it didn't shock me. What actually kept this movie afloat was the performance of the lead actress. She clearly has potential and carries most of the emotional weight. The male lead, on the other hand, felt noticeably weaker, though not bad enough to completely ruin things. The supporting cast was decent overall. If you're searching for a basic enemies-to-lovers teenage romance mixed with mafia vibes, fast cars, and dramatic tension, this film technically checks those boxes. That said, my reaction for most of the runtime was pure frustration. The story itself is completely flat and forgettable. The way the main characters behave toward each other is baffling. Their relationship develops in a way that feels irrational and forced, almost as if logic was never part of the script. What bothered me most was the lack of any real sense of time. Everything happens at lightning speed, making it impossible to emotionally connect with the characters. Watching it felt like sitting through a highlight reel of bad decisions, rather than a coherent narrative. The movie isn't outright unwatchable, but it definitely made me work to finish it. There are noticeable plot holes, though those were honestly the least of its problems. The biggest issue lies in the directing. From the opening scenes, it's obvious that the production lacked a clear vision. The pacing is erratic, transitions feel abrupt, and there's almost no emotional depth. Instead of pulling me into the story, the direction constantly reminded me that I was watching something staged and artificial. Visually, the production feels cheap. The sets and costumes lack creativity and often come across as lazy or rushed. Some scenes look so fake that they become distracting rather than immersive. It feels like the filmmakers were aiming for realism but missed the mark entirely, leaving behind an awkward and amateurish result. As an adaptation, it didn't work for me either. While a few moments loosely resemble the source material, the overall story feels watered down. The emotional complexity seems stripped away, as if the filmmakers assumed the audience wouldn't want anything deeper. The actor playing Nick was especially unconvincing. His portrayal felt shallow and cliché, which significantly dragged down the entire experience. Overall, the tone felt overly juvenile, more like a dramatic soap opera than a serious film. What could have been a compelling story instead turned into something melodramatic and hollow. I actually started watching this because it popped up on my Amazon Prime recommendations. I thought it was a horror movie and had it playing in the background while scrolling on my phone. Turns out, it wasn't horror, but to my horror, it was a strange teenage erotic thriller. Writing that sentence alone makes me laugh. The film tries to be everything at once. Underground fighting, street racing, family drama, all mashed together with zero focus. At one point, I genuinely felt uncomfortable watching it. The movie is packed with countless subplots that go nowhere, and the tone constantly shifts. The female lead even resembles a certain well-known actress, which only added to the surreal feeling. One line of dialogue, about being a stepsister and underage, was so absurd it became unintentionally comedic. I'm not even sure I know how to properly review a movie, so these are just my raw thoughts. I watched it because so many people claimed it was great, and I do enjoy forbidden love tropes. I haven't read the book, but I'm guessing the story follows the same pattern. And wow, it's cliché after cliché. The girl is not like other girls, obsessed with books, somehow an expert driver, and burdened with trauma, so the brooding bad boy stepbrother can conveniently comfort her. What makes even less sense is why the so-called bad boy, who apparently has endless options, instantly falls for his rude, annoying stepsister without even trying to know her. They barely exchange words before he's ready to fight anyone who looks at her wrong. It feels like 1,000 badly written Wattpad stories crammed into a single movie. In the end, the story just doesn't work. Teenagers don't act like this, the emotions feel fake, and the drama is exaggerated to the point of parody. I stopped watching once she went missing because I already knew exactly what was coming. Comforting scenes, emotional breakdowns, and over-the-top reactions. At that point, there was nothing left to surprise me. At first, I honestly felt like this was the kind of movie I might have loved if I were 13. Out of a 2-hour runtime, maybe 5 minutes truly stood out to me. If you're around 17 and you've already seen a lot of romance films, parts of this movie may feel predictable or underwhelming. But then again, oh my God, I ended up loving this movie far more than I expected. It completely surprised me. In many ways, it stayed close to the book, which I appreciated, and the interactions between the characters were genuinely funny and charming. The chemistry between the actors worked really well, and the performances felt natural. The plot twist near the end was impressive, and the car racing scenes were easily my favorite part. What I really liked is that the movie never felt like it was dragging. Every moment had purpose, and unlike many films in this genre, it never bored me. The forbidden love angle was handled in a way that felt exciting rather than exhausting. I could honestly watch this movie again and again without getting tired of it. I caught myself smiling and laughing throughout, and there's something incredibly heartwarming about that experience. If you're a huge fan of romantic or young adult fiction, this movie might feel like a dream come true. It genuinely felt like watching a book come to life on screen. I watched the movie 3 times already, and I'm someone who almost never rewatches anything, which should tell you how much it worked for me. As a book lover, I did try reading the novel afterward, but surprisingly, it didn't match the vibe the movie gave me, so I stopped reading and went back to rewatching the film instead. The acting, the storyline, the pacing, and especially the lead cast all felt top tier. That said, it's not a flawless movie. There are clear strengths, but also noticeable weaknesses. Since it's based on a young adult trilogy, there are plenty of cliches and taboo elements woven into the plot. I haven't read the full book series, so this review is purely based on the film itself. The story begins with Noah and her mother moving into a massive beachside mansion with their new family. Noah is 17 and carries heavy emotional baggage from her father's past, which explains why she struggles to adjust. Some viewers may see her as immature or bratty, but realistically, she's a teenager who's been forced to leave behind a life she finally felt stable in. Nicholas, on the other hand, is older, around 22, and is introduced as a charming, reckless heartthrob. Early on, it's revealed that he leads an underground world of car racing, illegal fights, and wild parties. His personal trauma isn't explored in much depth, but it's hinted that it stems from being abandoned by his mother after his parents' divorce. Despite that, his relationship with his younger half-sister, who has diabetes, shows a softer, more caring side to him. The movie starts off strong, especially in establishing the tension between the step-siblings and the genuine love shared by their parents. However, as the story progresses, large-time jumps are glossed over through brief dialogue rather than shown properly. Eventually, the film narrows its focus almost entirely on Noah and Nicholas, leaving many supporting characters feeling forgotten or underdeveloped. The central conflict revolves around Noah's unresolved trauma connected to her father. While bits and pieces are revealed throughout the movie, it often feels like important details are missing. It makes me wonder if future installments, if the trilogy continues on screen, will explore her past more deeply and give that storyline the closure it deserves. Even with these flaws, the movie succeeds where it matters most: the chemistry between Noah and Nicholas. That connection is clearly the heart of the film, and it's portrayed convincingly. The casting was spot on, and the actors fit their roles perfectly. I also appreciated that the romance didn't happen instantly. Noah genuinely disliked Nicholas at first, which made their eventual relationship feel more earned. The secrecy and thrill of their forbidden relationship added excitement. And while controversial, it's important to note that their bond isn't incestuous since they aren't related by blood. The slow shift from hatred to love made their story engaging to watch. And in the end, love wins, as it usually does in stories like this. Overall, while the movie has its shortcomings, it delivers emotion, excitement, and romance in a way that clearly resonates with its audience. It may not be perfect, but it's undeniably enjoyable. And for many viewers, that's more than enough. The drag races, the intense confrontations, and those unexpected twists. Honestly, it's all incredibly edgy and gripping. This film feels like a hidden gem that deserves far more attention than it gets. I'd strongly recommend it. Culpa Mia stands out as a deeply emotional and thought-provoking experience, diving into themes of trauma, guilt, and the long road toward redemption. With its layered storytelling, striking visuals, and powerful performances, the movie offers a compelling cinematic journey for viewers looking for something intense and meaningful. Right from the beginning, Culpa Mia establishes a heavy, brooding atmosphere. There's a constant sense of tension and unease that lingers throughout the film. The story unfolds gradually, revealing painful moments from the protagonist's past that continue to shape her present. The nonlinear structure works particularly well here, blending memories, present-day struggles, and looming consequences in a way that reflects the character's fractured emotional state. Visually, the film is stunning. Every frame feels carefully designed to convey isolation, sorrow, and inner turmoil. Muted color palettes, shadow-heavy lighting, and haunting sound design pull the audience deeper into the character's troubled world. It's immersive without being overwhelming, creating a mood that stays with you long after individual scenes end. The performances are another major strength. The lead delivers a raw and convincing portrayal of someone weighed down by unresolved pain and regret.